Welcome to the Draft Indy podcast. I'm Grant Sinning. Tonight I am joined by Alex Jacobson, Brian Karofsky, and Garrett Stallings. Now, guys, something's been bothering me, and this is going to be weird. Something's been bothering me for the last couple days. I started thinking about it, and I want you guys to think very seriously about this question, okay? What is Chuck Pagano's favorite movie?
I gotta Google search any movie that starts with grit.
True Grit.
Definitely got a Bruce Willis movie. I'm gonna go Die Hard.
Bruce Willis. Yeah.
Die Hard, True Grit. See, I didn't even think. I was thinking of what's the grittiest movie I could think of? And I totally forgot about True Grit. Now, are we talking the Matt Damon, or was it not Matt Damon? It was
no, the original. Definitely the original.
Definitely the original John Wayne. Okay. Yeah, because the newest one I think was like Matt Damon and Jeff Bridges, right?
That's probably Jim Irsay's favorite one.
Yeah. And then so on top of that question, Ryan Grigson's favorite movie, Silver Linings Playbook.
Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah. Actually, that's a way better answer. Wolf of Wall Street, I think, is a way better answer. Actually, that's good. That's real good, actually, because he's just kind of a d-bag like that. Okay, so we're gonna have Jake Arthur from Pro Football Spot join us in 10 minutes here. So let's just kind of go over some news and notes from the past week. Obviously, probably the biggest storyline for the Colts is no Hall of Fame game. But does anyone really care?
Yes. I care in that it's embarrassing for the NFL, and it's sucky that we have to put up with a league that can't even get games ready despite all the billions of dollars that they bring in. It just reminds me that we're kind of dealing with. We think of the NFL as this one singular entity that is really well managed and elite just because of how successful it is, but it's really not. It's this collection of people that don't really know what they're doing, and they're just trying to squeeze everything out of it that they can for themselves.
Man, I think the craziest thing is when you hear some of those stories. Like, the game was canceled at 6:45, something like that. Fans were still coming in, spending money and all that, and they didn't tell them the game was canceled till 8 o'clock. What a joke! That is terrible. That is, I don't know. That's bad. That's on the NFL. That's on the Hall of Fame.
I'm just upset I missed all those Scott Tolzien snaps I was looking forward to.
And it was going to be the Stephen Morris show versus not Brett Hundley or Aaron Rodgers. They have two third, fourth string guys. It just would have been bad. So I guess the next biggest news kind of to talk about in the past few days is Arthur Jones missing 3 to 4 weeks.
Kendall Langford.
There you go.
Oh yeah, that's my bad. Kendall Langford. I don't know what I'm thinking. Kendall Langford missing 3 to 4 weeks with a knee scope. We had a little combo, Alex and I did, about knees and how those injuries can be bad. Generally, knee scopes come back pretty good, but Kendall Langford is, 30?
And he's still 29, isn't he?
I thought he was 31.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a little older. So, I mean, he could have some trouble maybe coming back, but honestly, all we heard was knee scope. 3 to 4 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks puts him back before week 1. That's not bad, and it gives us our young guys who really need a lot of experience some time to play.
The
good
news is he's a guy who doesn't really need a lot of snaps. He's had a lot of snaps. He's been training camp. He's been in the preseason. He wasn't going to play much anyway. So, as much as we're worried about the long-term potential effects, which that's, I think, what people need to be worried about more than what he's missing in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Right. I mean, Garrett and I, we talked about it in a quick exchange earlier too. Is we've got what's the starting lineup if Perry's not in it? It's McGill, Hassan,
and Kerr.
And Kerr. That's awesome for me. I mean, those are some valuable snaps to guys last year who.
They're fun too.
Yeah, they're a fun group. They're a very athletic group. So it's good to get them some time.
Alex, was that a murmur of disagreement from Alex, who spent years watching these guys?
No, they're
no, it's not fun. It's not fun. Trust me. You haven't been.
I think that is interesting though, because none of them are really true nose tackles. Even though the nose tackle position, as we've seen from Alex, is mostly playing a one tech, which Kerr has played some of. But I want to see what they do in the preseason with 3
more pass rushing guys who are kind of more fit for the defensive end or defensive tackle spot. I want to see how they kind of format them and what you're going to do with a T.Y. McGill at one tech, or if they put, Ridgeway up the nose. I think that would be kind of cool too.
So, my charting thing was as obviously only about last year's defense under, I already blocked out his name, whoever our past defensive coordinator was.
Minuski,
thank you. So, under this Italian guy whose name I still can't say, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what the difference is going to be, and that's what I was at least most probably interested in seeing in this Hall of Fame game. Although you can't tell much, it's seeing what does he like to do, and if they're still running. Basically, I want to know if the defensive scheme is controlled by Pagano or whoever the coordinator is. Although they're probably going to be running similar things anyway, just because of their background.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of carryover under Pagano.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's still going to be the same focal points on the defense and same. They're going to like to do the same things. I'm not sure if they're going to go about it different ways, though. That's what I'm interested in.
Honestly, Pagano should still be a defensive coordinator.
He'd be a really good defensive coordinator in the fact that he could just yell at people, and that's seemingly the most important job of a defensive coordinator.
Chud for head coach?
Let's just...
I'm here for it.
No. It's preseason week 1, guys. Let's wait.
Gotta get these takes out, right? Been all year.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we got 23 plus weeks to do this. But anyways, what I've seen, what we've read, and what we've heard in interviews and player interviews and coach interviews, and again, gotta take it with a grain of salt. His scheme is more attacking than last year's scheme, so it'll be supposedly, and you could really see that with some of his Baltimore defenses. So I'll be interested to see if and it's mostly attacking from the defensive line, which will be good, I think.
And that plays to our strength, which I'm...
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
If you're just using linebackers to set the edge, then we've got edge setter extraordinaire Eric Walden, who, we won't have to worry about that edge ever being not set. So, I mean, it's something we won't have to worry about, in the next coming weeks. But I think preseason will be fun with those 3 guys up front, with O'Kine and Kurt Meggett. I think it's Meggett. Ron Thompson, Trevor Bates, who doesn't have any film apparently. I mean, I contacted Maine. I did. I emailed the Bearcats. I think they're the Bearcats. They're the Black Bears or whatever. I emailed Maine. They're a Bear team, and I talked to their video coordinator, and I asked him in a very nice way, "Will you please send me some tape? I would like to watch him." And I didn't get a single email back. And then I did that weird checkup email, "Hey, remember me? I was wondering if you could send me that tape." Nothing. So Maine, whatever.
All the Trevor Bates film is in Area 51 with
yeah,
at the end of Indiana Jones.
We've talked a lot about Midget and Bates obviously selected as outside linebackers, but I think really person we should be looking forward to watching is Earl O'Kine and exactly how and where they line him up. Because remember, I mean, he's still big. He's still 280, 290 pounds. So you want to see where exactly they're lining him up and how they're using him. Because that's kind of we know Midget and Bates, they're going to be used as, like we said, just pure edge rushers or edge setters. But O'Kine, we don't know exactly what they're doing. And I think even if they want to play him in a little more, I think it could create some weird but fun 4-man fronts, which I think would be kind of fun to watch.
Something that I got from Alex's wonderful pieces coming out here is Trent Cole played a lot of 3-tech.
He did. In their third down packages especially, they that was one thing they valued, and that's one thing that, even though they're pretty similar at this point, that's one thing that Trent Cole can do that Robert Mathis just can't, he has the strength to get through some of these guards, and it was pretty effective for them last year.
And even just an evaluation standpoint, I think that's almost something that we can think about during the draft this year. If we see a guy when we were watching Jordan Jenkins, we saw him rush from the inside, we thought that was good, and now we're just going to keep plugging Alex's piece because they're so good. But now that we know, with Alex, we're lining up an edge guy at 3-tech. Obviously, our defensive line is still deep, but if they want to keep like that, I think that can help us in evaluation in the future. If we see an outside linebacker from college line up over the middle and win, we have to think maybe the Colts are more interested in that guy just based on what he offers and what he brings on versatility alone.
Yeah, imagine a big athletic edge rusher who can bend the edge but can also attack from the middle, like a Preston Smith type, perhaps.
Who?
Or apparently Noah Spence, who's been doing very well at a Bucks camp, or a multitude of other guys. Shaq Lawson, even though he had a shoulder surgery, whatever. Well, let's not dwell on the past. Other news and notes. Other news and notes that I can think of off the top of my head, and you guys might be able to remind me. Ryan Kelly's back at practice today. That's good. Henry Anderson apparently is ahead of schedule, so we'll have to see how that turns out. And again, if Henry Anderson comes back off the PUP before the regular season, please do not expect a lot of snaps from him coming out. He's probably not in football shape. So we will need to, you got to be patient with him. But once he can get going, he's pretty good. We just hope that he can stay healthy for the long haul because we definitely need him. So I'm going to invite Jake in here.
While you're doing that, I think that's a point that a lot of people overlook, and it's kind of ignorant when you think about it, because once you expect someone to heal from their injury, you expect them to just be back to normal. But I don't think when people do that, they realize exactly like how long that person's gone without maintaining in the shape that they are, not only having to recover from the injury, but get back to playing shape. So, Grant, that was a good point that you brought up, because I feel like people don't really recognize or respect the amount of effort that it takes to recover from that, not only to get back into playing shape. So, yeah, don't expect Henry to be playing the amount of snaps that he did during this time last year, because obviously getting back to playing speed is something huge just for anyone recovering from any injury at any point.
So let's bring in Jake Arthur from Pro Football Spot now.
Hi, Jake.
For a training camp report. Jake, how you doing tonight? Hey, Jake, we can't hear you.
Oh, crap.
Give him a second here. Well, we will be getting a training camp report momentarily from the wonderful Jake Arthur, a very handsome man, in this little box in the bottom of my screen. Jake, you there? No.
Oh, crap.
Oh, come on. All right. Well, anyways, Jake, while you work on that, we'll continue to talk here. So some of the things that we're going to talk with Jake here about tonight is some of the things that he's seen. He's been at training camp a good amount of time this year. I'm not sure if he was there today, but we will find out what he's thinking, what he's seen. You can get the training camp tweets and you can get the training camp reports, but your eyes are always the best, because training camp is just always interesting because there's so many different things going on at the field at once, and no matter how many times you've been there, you can't just focus on one little area, and it's always a big fun time, and I'm really sad I didn't get to go this year, but I'll take going to the Chargers game later on this year as reconciliation. Jake, how we doing? Not so good.
We just ask him questions and he can answer only with facial expressions and nonverbal language.
That might work. That might work.
Not ideal.
Oh,
Jake,
hang on.
Is your handsome rating high? I think we can all shake our head yes. That'll work. Okay, so we'll keep going. Anything else? Do you guys know of any other news from the past week that we didn't get to cover last time? Did we talk about Darius Butler being safety?
Yeah.
We did. We talked about our safety situation, and that quickly led us into the spiral of depression.
It's bad. It's bad. Another thing that we kind of touched on just a little bit, and I'm going to be interested to talk to Jake about this, is we didn't really hit on it too much. We kind of briefly talked about it, is our tight end depth. And it's bad. I mean, Dwayne Allen hasn't played a full season, I don't think, in his career. Then we got my man, Jack Doyle, and then we've got Eric Swope, and then I don't know who else, Darian Griswold. So, okay. Jake is going to hop off, and he's going to come right back on with a different browser. So I'll send him another invite. But what do you
Yeah,
guys think about this tight end depth, especially in a tight end, very specific tight end scheme that we know that he will be running?
yeah, Grant. I just wanted to kind of go off what you said. 2012, he actually did play all 16 games his rookie season, although he had 45 catches because we were utilizing him. That was pretty much the only season we were utilizing him and Fleener. 2013, he played one game. 2014, which was supposedly his better year, which was he played once again only 13 games, and then 2015 again was only 13 games. So yeah, that's
2012 was his best year though.
Yeah.
Oh, 2012, he's a monster.
That was the best year we've gotten from a tight end since the days of Clark. But yeah, it is very concerning. It's interesting that they. Oh, hey.
I think we're there.
Yeah, Jake, do you have headphones?
Yes. Can you hear me yet?
Yes, we can.
Sweet.
That sultry voice. But anyways, okay, so Jake, what have you seen? Hopefully you can hear me. Pay attention as you're trying to put your headphones on.
Yeah.
The tight ends. Who's been the third string tight end, and is it Eric Swope, and does he look any better than he did last year?
They have made it be Eric Swope pretty much exclusively as the tight end 3, but it's just really bland. I mean, you don't get the tight end 3 to play a ton in season as is, but that'll be a good thing for them in this instance, I think. Because he's also not much of a blocker. He's pretty much just exclusively in the pass game. It's been really not great to see that. I've been thinking the whole time who realistically should be the tight end 3, and it had me longing for Sean McGrath like last year. But there's just not a guy like that walking through the door, unfortunately.
Has Darian Griswold got to play at all?
I think he is still on PUP, I believe.
Okay, that's interesting. He's a man with speed. I watched a couple of games of his after the undrafted free agent time. He's got a lot of speed. He played in I can't remember what team he's from, but he played in a very spready offense, and he had a lot of opportunities at H-back. And with that speed, that seam speed that he had, I'm interested to see what he can bring, but it's kind of upsetting that he's on PUP. But this year, it's interesting because if we don't have a tight end 3, and if it's not Swope, then it's very interesting because they have spent a lot of time trying to bring Swope along.
Yeah.
He has been on the roster for 2 years.
I really think it's interesting that they invested so much in Dwayne's contract, yet seem to have neglected the depth behind him, and that makes me wonder if they really are going to emphasize the second and third tight ends in this offense the way they did in Carolina in 2011, where they were using multiple tight ends in the backfield as blockers and also on the line. And I really think they are. I really think they're going to go more with an 11 personnel look this year more often, and that's why Dwayne was going to be the guy, and the rest behind him were just going to be hopefully not on the field very much because they would only be on if Dwayne got hurt.
Right. Now, Jake, when you've watched in the 11-on-11 type drills, has it been mostly 11 personnel, or has it been a mix of like some fullbacky type stuff? What have you seen there?
You really don't see a whole lot of fullback involvement. If it is, a lot of the time it's Jack Doyle. He honestly looks pretty similar to the role he's had his whole career. I think we all like him, but he's kind of limited in what he can do. You're not going to see him stretch the field a lot.
He always falls forward.
Yeah, exactly. To me, he's kind of the king of the inside the 10-yard out route, and he's getting a little more play in the middle of the field, but he's primarily been your fullback if you're going to say they have one. But you usually see plenty of receivers on the field, plenty of Moncrief, Hilton, and Dorsett all out there together. It's just a really wide receiver heavy team, so that's how it's being reflected there in practice.
Jake, I want to ask you. You talked about we expect a lot of 11 personnel. Obviously, those 3 receivers. Has it been Moncrief on the left, and then Ty in the slot on the right, and Dorsett on the boundary in the right. How have they been lining up the three of them?
You actually do see plenty of that. T.Y. Hilton in the slot is something I think they're definitely looking to take advantage of in the season. Even on the days I haven't been there, I've read up on it, and he seems to be getting some play there in the slot. But overall, they move them around plenty.
Okay.
But Dante seems to be a mostly outside guy. And it makes sense. You really want Dorsett and Hilton to be able to take advantage of those nickel corners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dorsett and Hilton in the slot. That's very exciting, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Hilton. He's been in the slot a lot over the course of his career, and it's always been good to have that kind of speed closer to the middle of the field to like split the seam if he has to. And it's just good for Luck to have his favorite option close at hand, I think.
Oh yeah, it's gone well for them in the past for sure.
Now, keeping on the theme of wide receivers, has anyone stuck out to you as a wide receiver 4 or 5? Obviously, we're pretty sure that Quan Bray is going to stick around as a returner, but has there been any of those other guys that have impressed you enough to where you're like, I want to see that guy make the 53-man roster?
I think, like you said, Bray has pretty much got to be one of those guys that goes onto the roster is probably the 4. But a lot of those lower-level guys have really stepped up. You hear Chester Rogers get in there every now and then. But my 2 guys have mostly been Mikhail McKay and Tavon Smith. Unfortunately, not a lot from Danny Anthrop. I think people had high hopes.
From Purdue, right?
Yeah. And he kind of fits that Griff Whalen profile, but he hasn't lived up to that at all. He doesn't get a lot of action by any means in the scrimmage portion of practice, as far as actually getting balls thrown his way. But Tavon Smith and Mikhail McKay, I think, hold the upper hand because they're both large. Chester Rogers isn't all that big, and they already have plenty of smaller guys. So guys with size and a lot of athleticism haven't unfortunately stuck to the roster for them when you consider Duron Carter and Derrick. So if they can get a guy like McKay or Smith to get on the roster, or at least groom them on the practice squad, I think that's what they're going to be looking to do.
Now, I've talked about it a little bit because I've done some research on Tavon Smith because I was very interested in him when we took him or when we got him as an undrafted guy. Is he as fast as his pro day numbers indicate? They had him as like a 4.39 type guy. Does he have that kind of speed, or is that kind of exaggerated pro day numbers?
I think it's probably a little exaggerated. He's not that he's not fast, but a lot of his big plays have come in blown coverages. He seems to have plenty of room open to operate. He's making the plays, but he's not really crushing guys with his speed. But that's not to say he isn't fast still. But
okay.
Touching on the rookies here, LaRaven Clark, have you gotten to see him a lot? And specifically, how has he looked, if so, in one-on-one drills?
I think he's kind of held his own a bit in one-on-one drills. Someone asked me about this the other day. He doesn't. Okay, yeah, that's right. He doesn't. You would think he was going to have to really get some one-on-one tutoring, and that there would be a lot of attention specifically on him. But it really hasn't seemed that way so far. Philbin and Joe Gilbert have been kind of equal opportunity teachers. They really get after all the guys. But in one-on-one drills, he really hasn't done too poor. There was one day, I think they were running some variation of the Oklahoma drill, and Hassan Ridgeway just absolutely put him horizontal. It was not pretty for Clark at all, but I guess that's a good thing for Ridgeway. But I don't think there's a whole lot to worry about. He is working with the second team consistently. And they're not forcing the issue either. He's actually earned it, but he's definitely holding his own, I'd say.
I want to, now that we've kind of talked about offensive line, do you have a prediction for? We think Wrights is going to be right tackle. That's obviously where they listed him. Do you have a prediction for right guard and right tackle for day one for season 1 opener?
The other day, Stephen Holder kind of poked Pagano a bit during media availability about like who is the right tackle, because it's been Joe Wright's exclusively.
Okay.
And he finally kind of gave in and said that it was Joe Wright's. And you never know if that means he's saying, for now or whatever. But it would be hard for me to imagine it not being Wright's the whole way through. Because the guys that they know they're going to be playing during this season, they're in their spots right now. Costanzo's staying at left tackle, Mewhort left guard, Kelly at center, and it's been Wright's always at right tackle. And if I were going to guess who would win right guard, it'd be Denzel Good. I really think they want to force the issue with Thornton, and I don't know why. Joe Philbin doesn't owe him anything. He's new. Thornton's been here like 4 years.
Yep.
Denzel Good has just clearly been the better option. How many times are they going to let the Thornton thing fail before they just decide to go in the obviously better option? Now, they have been playing Good, quite often at right guard. He's been starting practices there, and although they say they're trying to balance reps at right guard between Thornton and Good, it's been Good that's been getting most of the looks.
How has Joe Haig been handling the transition from a fifth-round rookie left tackle for a lot of his career? I think he's been playing a lot of right tackle and a lot of right guard. How's he stepped up? Have you noticed anything from him?
He actually looks really good. He doesn't get whooped very often in those one-on-one pass rushing drills very often, and I believe I've seen him most at left guard with the second team. It kind of had me thinking that they basically want him to be their other Jack Mewhort. He plays pretty similarly out there on the practice field. They're using him the same way. It can be hard to evaluate some of the linemen, especially the rookies, before they've even played preseason, because there's just so much contact both they and the defensive linemen can do. But he's looked pretty good so far when they're isolated and actually having one-on-one drills.
Yeah, and a couple podcasts ago, I think it was right after they drafted Haig, we were on here, and I was thinking, like, if they don't re-sign Wrights, I almost feel like they want Haig to be like their future Wrights, where like they start him off obviously playing like back up to every position, and then like slowly transition him into a starter where they kind of is now. So I think, kind of like you mentioned, you said they want to be their Mewhort, but like I think starting him at guard, and then probably if they move on from someone from the right side, either Wrights or Good or something, Thornton, something like that, I'm gonna see like he's eventually living up to that role and eventually becoming a starter there. I think it just seems like they want to take their time with him.
What's interesting to me is, I don't think we talked about this post-draft, but when they took Joe Haig, it almost seemed like it was more of a best player available than like a need, because I think they had identified LaRaven as a guy they wanted and a guy they figured could eventually play that other tackle spot or maybe a guard spot if it didn't work out at tackle. And Haig, they raved about, I believe, post-draft about where they had him as like a third-round player or even higher. They were able to get him to fifth. So that makes me think maybe they didn't have a clear role for him when he came out, and they were just hoping he'd stick somewhere and he could just let the talent speak for itself rather than force it into a fit. So I'm interested to see where that fit turns out to be.
Well, he was definitely a best player available pick. I mean, he was the third offensive lineman they took in 5 rounds, so clearly BPA. And in terms of him being left guard right now, it kind of makes sense. He did start in college on the left side, so maybe it's more of a comfort thing for him. And certainly the right side of the line has its fair share of prospects there. So, yeah, Mewhort depth is a great way for him to start out his year.
They were going to start him on Sunday as right tackle, starting.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be interesting to see that. Real quick, 2 more things I want to talk about real quick on the offensive side of the ball before we switch to the defensive side of the ball. Austin Blythe, what's going on with him? He's behind Harrison in center snaps? Has he been getting guard snaps? What's he looking like out there?
He's kind of in a weird spot. Last week, I want to say maybe it was Monday. It was the day that Ryan Kelly went out with the shoulder injury, I'd kind of thought I hadn't seen really anything from him at all. And then Kelly went out, and then when you would think Jonathan Harrison would take over those center reps, it was Blythe running with the first team after Kelly left. And so that was pretty interesting. And he's gotten lots of looks at guard as well. Second and third team there, mostly third team guard. But then after Kelly had been out, and it was established he was not going to be coming back immediately, we had asked Coach Pagano who was going to take the snaps, and he kind of looked at us like, duh, it's going to be Harrison. And it's like, well, all right. I mean, we just saw Blythe running with the first team when Kelly went out. So do they trust him? Do they not? Was it just to see what they were going to get from him? Who knows? But just for what it's worth, he did have some first-team reps at center.
As a continuation of that, have they used Harrison at guard a lot?
Not a whole lot, because Kelly was out for at least a few practices, so he was getting like all the first-team center reps, and that's pretty much exclusively where I saw him while Kelly was out. Now, Kelly did return today. I didn't see where Harrison was now that Kelly was back. But I would imagine he probably peppered in a little bit of guard like he was before, but primarily the second-team center.
Okay. Last question from me on the offensive side of the ball. Seen a lot of tweets about Josh Ferguson. What have you seen from Josh Ferguson? Does he look like he's got? I mean, it sounds like he's the second RB that they're using. Is that true, or is he just kind of the scat back kind of guy, or what are you seeing?
I think they're still experimenting with him and seeing what they want to do. He started off camp hot before they had put pads on. He was really fast. They had him mixed in with the first team quite a bit. But then once they had their first couple padded practices, it looked like he needed some adjustment. He just, wasn't moving as fast, and maybe he was just thinking too much. Wasn't getting as much play with the ones anymore. But now, as of the last few practices, he's kind of regained that edge. He's getting some more time with the ones. When Gore is off the field, he's actually being one of the first guys on there to relieve him, and not just Robert Turbin. I do think Turbin is probably still their tentative plan at the second running back. But again, that's probably another one of those things where we're just going to have to see how the preseason unfolds when they're actually in game situations. I think they're pretty trusting with some of their rookies, and I don't think he'll be any different. And one big reason for that is his pass protection hasn't looked too bad, honestly. To me, it's been better than Turbin's when they do the one-on-one drills with linebackers versus running backs and tight ends. To me, I mean, Ferguson can keep the pass rusher at bay, but he is a small guy. He looks like a small guy doing the job, but he is doing it effectively. So I think that, and obviously the fact that he can catch the ball, if he can prove to actually be able to run in the NFL, maybe between the tackles, then that's probably what's going to get him quite a few reps, not only during the preseason, but actually get him onto the roster on the regular season.
Cool. All right. So first thing I want to hear about on this defensive side, because he was our second-round pick, TJ Green. I know he had been injured. What was it? A calf strain, hamstring strain, something like that. He's been back for a few days. Have you had a chance to see him since he's been back? And what have you noticed with TJ Green?
Yeah, I'm actually pleasantly surprised with Green. He did miss maybe 2 or 3 days with that calf strain. But they plugged him in right away, and he handled it well. I mean, he did a couple of things that, he's obviously a rookie and still, getting acquainted to the safety position, I guess you can say. There was one play, for instance, during the night practice where Luck threw a quick pass out, and Green was looking the wrong direction or something. And if he would have been paying attention, it would have been a pick six going 80 yards the other way. But just that mental portion of the game, I think that's still catching up to him. But I do like how many reps they're giving him, and they're important reps. He's been exclusively Clayton Geathers' replacement out there. And then, interestingly enough, when Mike Adams was hurt for a couple days, they had Butler out there with him. So they trust Green, and I love how many reps he's actually getting to gain that experience because foot issues can be tricky. So Geathers may be out longer than any of us know. So he's got to be ready, and I think they're acknowledging that by how much playing time they're giving him. Now, not everything is, he's not looked like a rookie the whole time. He's definitely made some nice plays. There's been some nice athletic pass breakups that you would think maybe a lesser athletic guy wouldn't make. And he also had a pretty good interception in the red zone one of the days last week. So I've been surprised he's not had as big of a learning curve as a lot of people thought he might.
Has it been a lot of dropping back in the coverage, or has he been playing up a lot, or is it a mix of both? Because, I mean, when we saw his strengths in film, obviously, were playing up close and making tackles, despite kind of his athleticism.
A little bit of both. You see him split out wide against receivers sometimes, and he'll be in the slot as well. Not a ton of single high with him, but you do see some out there. So they're kind of throwing everything at him right now to see what he can handle.
And that makes sense because the Colts like to use their secondary safety and what you just described as a slot corner, as a in-the-box tight end matchup, and playing that underneath zone coverage in cover one. So that is, I think, even more evidence that this might be reaching a bit, but I think this is more evidence that they see Green as the strong safety of the future and Geathers as the free safety. Really quick. Go ahead.
I just thought that Green's man coverage ability was one of his strengths coming out of college, actually, so I'm glad to hear that that's where they're using him.
Really quickly on the defensive line, first off, has Hassan Ridgeway looked as on the same level as the T.Y. McGills, Zach Kerrs, all these other guys he's competing with who aren't necessarily veterans?
I can't say that he's jumping out quite as much as those guys. McGill has actually been really active. Same with Kerr. He seems to have a little more intensity. He might have got a little complacent over the last year or so. He started out hot as a rookie, but kind of fizzled.
It's the contract year.
Yeah.
Just saying, not saying. Keep going.
Yeah, there you go. Ridgeway, he hasn't looked bad. Like I said, he had that really nice individual drill against Raven Clark. He does look like he might get gassed a little bit at the end of practices. But he's another one of those guys that I don't really want to pass many judgments until I see him in the preseason. Just because it's been hard to really get a gauge on what he's going to be able to do so far.
Yeah, that's true. The training camp offensive defensive line isn't necessarily always a great indicator of how things are going to go. So I think we're going to do two more questions and then we'll wrap it up with you today, Jake. One from me, rookie from last year, Dujon Smith. He's been getting some mentions. How has he looked this year? Last year he looked really bad in camp and then looked really bad in preseason. Has he stepped it up this year? Does he look healthy yet? I know he is kind of, I think it's first seen about 90-95%. Can you fill us in on what Dujon is doing out there?
Yeah, he doesn't. For starters, he doesn't look anywhere near as bad as he did last year. Because that was just ugly and it was uncomfortable to watch, honestly. He seems to have a little more of his confidence back. You can see him attacking the ball a little more. I still think he's behind Jaleel Brown on the depth chart. Brown he's been more dependable. He's probably not as athletic and fast as Smith, but he's just proven to. I mean, they started him in some games last year because they needed to, but to me, he is still a guy above Smith on the depth chart. Now, back to Smith. Like I said, he has been attacking the ball a little more. He gets some pass breakups. But you still see him running around with the second and third teams occasionally. Now, something important for him, there has been kind of an odd amount of cornerbacks subbing in practices. I don't know why, but Patrick Robinson is not around a lot. I don't know what that situation is at all. But you see Brown and Smith kind of getting some play with the ones because Robinson will be out. and then you had Darius Butler playing safety, which left their opening at corner. So that gave those couple of guys some important reps. Plus, with Tevin Mitchell being injured, he had been getting plenty of run with those guys as well. And with him being out, that gives Brown and Smith, a little more run.
Okay. So kind of to wrap it up, we've got kind of a back jam of edge rushers. So I'm kind of curious to hear what you'd like to tell us about Trevor Bates, O'Kine, Kurt Maggot, whatever his last name is, Majit. Jake, what is it? What is it? Majit?
It's Majit. I had to look it up in the media guide for pronunciations. It's
all right,
Majit.
so I won't pronounce it wrong again. And then Ron Thompson is who do you think has an edge to make the roster? Who's looking good out there?
My top two guys of that group would have to be Trevor Bates and Earl O'Kine. O'Kine had 1 or 2 days where he just looked awesome. I think the day he came back from being injured for several practices, he went out and manhandled people. He was, he's a huge guy, but he was putting on really athletic, agile moves, doing the spin move, ripping through guys really quickly, both in 11-on-11s as well as 1-on-1 drills against the running backs and tight ends. So I loved what I saw from him. Durability might be a small issue, at least just this camp. He's had some times where, he keeps going down and needing some attention. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But Bates, he's another guy. He's doing a lot of work with the top units, and he's being successful. He's been really explosive, and he's picking up his speed now. Now that there's not so much to process mentally, he's kind of getting the hang of things. And it's been in the run game as well. I've just kind of taken some mental notes of some running plays that have, kind of stretched to the outside, and he's there to sniff him out the entire time, force him out of bounds. Majit, I haven't seen a lot of just because he's been hurt so often, but he is back now. And I saw Josh Wilson was saying that they seem to be putting him more at strong side, which makes a lot of sense because he's a big guy. And I think they had Bates listed on the strong side right now, and I think a lot of people considered him undersized. So if they can get Majid up to speed, I think that'd make a lot more sense to put him on the strong side behind Walden. Thompson, a lot of people have been impressed with him, and he's popped off the page a couple times, but it's been against the lower-level guys from what I've seen. So, again, another guy we're going to have to see in preseason to see who he's doing it against and how he's doing it, if he's thinking too much, if he's just actually getting to the ball carrier and the quarterback, or how that's going.
Okay. All right. Well, kind of wrap it up real quick. Who has the worst number at training camp? Whose jersey number doesn't make any sense at all?
Oh man, they're rotating these tight ends through the 40s, and it's not good. Yeah, not good at all.
Unless Dallas Clark rocked the 44, but I really think
44 is different though.
Yeah, like 44 and maybe 47 I can see, but yeah, I don't like it at all.
Oh yeah, I don't like when corners are in the high 30s or in the 40s. That's not good. That's a bad time.
Does 78
with the tight ends.
Does 78 on Ryan Kelly look as bad as it does in pictures? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't bother me, although that's not quite a center number. I kind of
in the 60s, I think.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I think a 78's more for a tackle, but it doesn't bother me too bad.
All right. Well, Jake, thank you so much for joining us. You guys can follow Jake on Twitter at JakeArthurPFS. Read his stuff on Pro Football Spot because it's very enlightening, very entertaining. Thank you, Jake, so much for stopping by tonight, and we'll have you on again, I promise. You've been a regular guest with us, and we will make sure we continue that trend in the future.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It's always a good time.
See you, Jake.
All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to transition into, are you guys ready for it? It's August 2017 running back watch list, okay? It's time. College season is starting soon.
There's So many gifs. I just want to animate as myself right now.
There's so many. Okay, so we've talked about the running back depth being Gore, Turbin, Todman, Ferguson, retired Varga, rest in peace, Trey Williams, Abu Torre from Memphis, I think. Next year is a ridiculous running back class. I've already lightly watched one or two games from about 9 guys, and I would take all 9 of them as our number 2 running back, if not the number 1 running back right now. Most of them are the number 1 running back. Another, maybe 1 or 2 would be the number 2 behind Gore until his legs fall off. But I mean, it's time. College season starts here soon, so let's just kind of inform our viewers who are going to be some of these running back names to look out for, to watch, and to consider for the Colts. I think the easiest, I'll go with 3 names that pretty much are universal. Leonard Fournette, Nick Chubb, and Dalvin Cook. If you don't know who those guys are, you're not paying attention, but that's not your fault. You don't have to pay attention to the draft. That's what you have us for.
Well, I would put McCaffrey in there.
McCaffrey as well. Yeah, McCaffrey's great. I mean, a lot of these names,
just
you're
name
probably
recognition at least.
You're gonna have heard of most of these guys. I hope. But a lot of these guys are. I mean, they're fantastic. Ezekiel Elliott's good. I would have loved to have Ezekiel Elliott this year. He was the 4th overall pick. I would take all 4 of those guys I just mentioned over Ezekiel Elliott.
I would take 0 of them, but that's just.
Oh, that is
okay.
burning.
What a surprise!
That is a burning
Alex.
take.
Nope,
All right.
It's not a burning take.
Dude, that's not a burning take.
Not to me. Nope.
Woo!
I think that Zeke Elliott is like maybe the 3rd best prospect I've seen since Gurley. I would take Chubb and Dalvin Cook this year, both over him. But that's it.
Actually, I take that back. I would totally take Nick Chubb, but that's it.
Yeah,
Chubb.
Chubb is ridiculous, dude. If you're going to watch one of these guys this year, watch Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb, we make sure we got to give the schools out. Nick Chubb's from Georgia. Todd Gurley's successor tore his ACL game 2 last year, something like that.
He had a schedule in his recovery. That's what they're saying, anyways. So hopefully,
so we might get to see him early this year. Hopefully, we will see. We need to see if he's got.
He'll be fine.
We don't need any more tape on him, though. We've seen all we'd have to see.
Yeah, he could take the year off, and he would still be a top.
If you assure me health, he's the
Yeah, and the good thing is with his injury, even if we don't get the full season tape, he'll be more than fine for all the testing.
Yeah. By the time of the combine, he'll definitely have gotten over it, and he'll do well at the combine. He's a powerful little dude. He's not the fastest guy in this class. That's probably Dalvin Cook, but he can move, and his balance and his power, it's just everything you would want to see from a running back.
I think he was responsible for 2 of Reggie Ragland's 3 missed tackles last year. I mean, I get, but I remember, I think
he
pretty
ruined
much
it.
the only person Reggie Ragland had trouble tackling last year in the SEC was Nick Chubb.
He ended Antonio Morrison's life on a counter, I remember.
Yes, he did. So Nick Chubb, also very good anticipation. He's got the skill set you want to see. Number 2 on my list, Dalvin Cook, Florida State. Garrett said very speedy. He's really good. He can catch. He's a game changer type running back.
I haven't watched Dalvin Cook, but just seeing him, I think the thing that sticks out to me the most is how flexible his lower body is. When you talk about ankle flexion, the ability to just cut, he is so he puts his legs at the weirdest angles. You would think that any other running back would be slipping and falling and losing acceleration, but he contorts his lower body to miss defenders and maintains his already elite top speed, which is just amazing.
He's very smooth. A lot of people have compared him to Jamal Charles. I really don't like that comp because I think that Charles, if you go back, especially into Charles' college tape at Texas, it's like watching a 16-year-old student driver in a Ferrari. Is with Charles just like in this young guy in this ridiculous body that he can barely control, just constantly overrunning defenders, sticking his foot in the ground and trying to jump behind them so he can get around them. It's pretty entertaining. And
I like that analogy.
Not the athlete that Charles is. He's not Chris Johnson. He's not Jamal Charles. He can't. He's not going to be one of those handful of guys that can actually like straight up outrun NFL secondaries. But he is a big playback, and he's more controlled than Charles was. He's steadier. Like Brian said, he's very smooth. I don't think he's a better prospect than Charles was, just to be clear. But I'm just outlining the differences. And I actually think that Dalvin, despite his speed, a lot of people are going to label him as a zone runner. I actually think he'll be better in a gap scheme where he can just use his speed to like hit a lane, and because he prefers to manipulate defenders with these smaller, more subtle cuts than say Charles, who likes to plant his foot and like get an angle on somebody. But yeah, either way, he'll be great wherever he ends up.
Yeah, he's a very entertaining runner. Definitely worth keeping an eye out for the 2017 draft. And these guys that we're talking about, these guys that we're going to talk about on this little section of our podcast this evening, they are going to buck that trend of not taking running backs early. I know we just had a 4th overall pick, and I know the year before we had a 9th overall pick in, I think, 15th, Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, 15th. It was 10 and 15.
I could see 3 or 4 of these guys going in the first round next year.
I think 4 or 5 is the number.
And I mean, it's very interesting because this class is going to be great. There's a lot of good defenders. There's a lot of good wide receivers. There's a lot of good running backs, as we're saying. I think there's some interesting offensive line players,
quarterbacks.
yeah, there's 2 quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson and whoever else.
Deshaun Kaiser, Notre Dame.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Brad Kaya. I didn't know you were going to say Kaiser.
No.
You don't know if Kaiser's even going to start, so.
He better.
I hope so. There's like a couple middlings at quarterback, but yeah, it's Watson and pick your choice, but yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's go back, keep on schedule with these running backs. Interesting here on my little rankings, my 3rd overall is Christian McCaffrey. Interesting take. Or is it? I mean, he's
really going to be the most polarizing out of all these guys.
It's because he's a white man. He's white, man.
Yeah.
He's white and from Stanford.
Yeah, he's very good. His feet, like, they might be the best. He might have the best footwork in the class, honestly. Mm-hmm. And he's got maybe the best receiving skill set. One thing I should bring up, though, that a lot of people aren't talking about, but is a big deal, McCaffrey might not go pro after this year. He might go back and graduate. His family does not need the money.
Yeah, that's true. That truly is a good point.
Stanford's football program has like a 99% graduation rate, so almost nobody goes pro early.
That's true.
There's not really a big reason for McCaffrey to buck that trend.
The only reason I would think of it is because that type of running back that you see that has, for instance, like Amir Abdullah, when he was returning kicks early in his career, I think he obviously realized the value of what NFL talent evaluators see in having that many touches. I don't know how many touches McCaffrey has, but I know the way that they're using him. Yeah, like he could be up toward like 1,000 touches probably by the time his 3rd year ends, and that's like a lot.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's another. You know a lot more about the Stanford football culture than I do, but I'm just saying a player like that who's used in multiple facets, who pretty much is the entire offense, that's the kind of running back that we see come out early, because if you add a 4th year to that amount of workload, like you're getting way up there in touches, like where you actually have to think about that as their future because they've had so many touches just in the college level.
That is a very good point. So if he does go pro, that'll probably be a factor.
And another thing that you could also consider, a lot of these guys are juniors. Now, are they going to be like, well, all these other guys are coming out, that's going to push me down draft boards? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, and with his incentive to want to maybe go back to school, you know, that's definitely something to consider.
I think McCaffrey is the only like top 5-ish or top most hyped back that might return to school. I think Fournette's going pro, Chubb's going pro, Cook's going pro.
Well, and another good point to think about that is a lot of these running backs become more self-aware of their draft stock, and I think coaches will kind of play into this a little bit because, for instance, like Nick Chubb, like their running back class has been good forever, and they also have Sonny. Is it Mitchell? I think.
Sony Michelle, yeah.
Michelle, like he's very good, and so like we kind of see this at like almost places like Alabama. Obviously, Henry was different this year. He was like the workhorse back, but if they have good running backs behind them, they're not obviously needing to be used as much. So not only does it could help the team, but it could help that specific player's draft stock. But Grant, that's a good point thinking about just the amount of talent, and if they want to wait a year and hope that the talent pool the next year is less, where they're more of a standout. Because I mean, any other year you kind of think about it. Obviously, Gurley and Zeke are great prospects, but I mean, you want to think about like Leonard Fournette. I mean, we're going to get to him as like the fourth best running back in this class. Like he's top 2 pretty much in any other class.
Right. He is my fourth running back, Leonard Fournette out of Louisiana State. Interesting runner. Had a lot of Adrian Peterson comps to begin last year. I don't think that's the case.
As a high school prospect, he had Adrian Peterson comps.
Yeah.
Interesting. I've watched maybe 1 or 2 games from him, but it's enough to know that he's got the skill set that you want to see. Was he injured as well?
No, I don't think so. No, but yeah,
he
he's
just
very
pulled
good.
off at the end.
He was getting tired, I think. I mean, I don't blame him because they were running him into the ground.
They ran him a lot. So he's definitely someone that we're going to be watching. One of my favorite guys, even though I have him 5th, Samaje Perine from Oklahoma. He is a very interesting guy. Now, you had talked about earlier how Dalvin Cook was a gap scheme type runner. Now, when you're talking about Perine is a one-cut zone. He puts his foot in the ground and drives.
Yeah.
I mean, and drives, and he's gonna be a Chuck Pagano favorite. He's a little rolling ball of butcher knives, guys. I mean, he really is. He's a smaller guy, he's smaller in stature, but bigger. He's
tough as hell. I mean, balance is fantastic.
And he could actually like move, which is what's impressive. I don't know what to make of him yet because I'm not sold on the other parts of him, but I will acknowledge that he is strong and he can move, which is a rare combination.
Yeah, I mean,
I also have him in my top 5.
Obviously, he's a great talent, but you have to be able to have at least somewhat a high level of mobility to rush for 426 yards in one game. Like, there's so many big plays that you need to break off in order to achieve that. So obviously, yeah, but every time I see him, I just think of Maurice Jones-Drew. Like he just looks that part to me, and I mean he's really good.
Well, for a lot of these guys, they're so close that it's really going to come down, for me at least, to the combine and who performs best there to determine my final rankings. Like for me, P. Ryan right now is on the same level as about Royce Freeman from Oregon, who we have not talked about yet, and really, I mean, who probably was just going to come down to who runs the faster 40, which might be Freeman, actually, even though he is heavier.
And speaking of Royce Freeman, he is number 6th on my list. So he's a very good talent out of Oregon. Interesting, he had a very bad offensive line. Very, very bad, in my opinion, just watching them.
But he led the Pac-12 in rushing.
But he did, and that's a testament to his skill. And he also pass blocked a lot, which is interesting, especially in that spready type offense.
Freeman's he's certainly not the best running back in this group, but I think he's my favorite, other than maybe Nick Chubb. He he's a guy who can do it all, but in a incredibly large package with, again, that burst that you don't see too often from a 230-pound guy.
Yeah, I'm guessing he's more like 225, but regardless, you don't see a guy that big who really runs quite the way Freeman does. I mean, Freeman runs like this really shifty back with great lower body fluidity, who tries to get around people in the open field instead of just putting his shoulder into them. And it's viable because he is that kind of athlete. So it's really interesting to watch him.
Yeah. Royce Freeman, Oregon.
Good pass catcher too.
Yeah, very good pass catcher. Number 7 on my list, Wayne Gallman out of Clemson.
He kind of came on really late. Like he was good at Clemson, but like in terms of like NFL ability, he came on like really late, and it wasn't until the end of the season and the postseason where we saw what he could do against against non-ACC opponents and how much he could.
It was
So
kind of
he
like
came on
Ezekiel
really
Elliott
late.
light from 2014 when Elliott was a relative no-name and he was stuck to the Big Ten, but then he rushed for 300 yards against Alabama and Oregon. And
that Oregon game was insane from Zeke. But yeah, Gallman is tough as hell, man.
He's like a little taller and lengthier, right? But he's a good pass catcher.
He's a very good bat. I think he's one of the best of this group in that.
Definitely, I'd agree.
I thought he was at least like 6'1". I can't remember though.
I don't know if he's
I thought he was
6'1",
taller.
but he's about 6 foot or so.
Okay.
Moving on, the other running back from Georgia, Sony Michel, we kind of hit it at him earlier. Interesting to watch. Don't know how many carries he gets behind Chubb. That dude is fast. Like that dude can fly.
Like low 4.3s fast. He's amazing.
It's interesting, yeah, because Michel actually, I feel like his speed is almost inconsistent on tape because he was if you don't know this, he was a track star in high school. Like he legitimately elite speed. And he came to Georgia, and like Chubb is not as fast as I've seen Michel at times, but Chubb is averaging like so many, like a way higher yards per carry behind the same line. Like, and Chubb's yards per carry is pretty ridiculous, so it's not really a fair standard to hold Michel to. But I've gone back to Michel's freshman tape, and oh my God, he can really turn it on. And
I remember. Go ahead.
I've heard other people comp him to like a Shady McCoy type back, which I think is a comp I like because Michel has that kind of lateral juking ability and toughness. The only question is if he can maintain his explosiveness because I do think he's put on weight since he got into school. Not fat, but like, he's bulked up. So I'll be interested to see how he tested the combine.
I just want to talk about. I remember watching Gurley, and I think I was watching Aaron Murray or one of their offensive linemen. I can't remember. I was watching like a Georgia game. And I was like, oh, that's not Gurley running. And I saw like Nick Chubb. I was like, oh, I remember hearing his name. I was like, wow, that guy's gonna be really good. And then there's another running back too, and I remember blazing fast. I was like, how did just imagine like the trio of running backs at one time you get with Sonny, Nick Chubb, and Todd Gurley at the same time. Like that would be ridiculous.
That might have been Keith Marshall. Are you sure it wasn't Keith Marshall?
Maybe it was Keith Marshall.
Keith Marshall ran like a 4.35 or something.
Okay, well add him like that. Like those are awesome running backs having the team at the same time. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, Georgia's running back recruiting has been like probably the best of any position in college football over the last half decade, really. Because Gurley and Chubb are like the two best running backs I've seen really since Gurley was playing college football. So.
Real quickly, I know Brian has been dying to talk about Jalen Hurd out of Tennessee, so I'll let Brian give us a little breakdown of Jalen Hurd.
Hurd's really interesting. The first thing that for the next 7-8 months, first time you say Jalen Hurd, first thing anyone's going to bring up is the fact that he's 6'4". Yeah, which is weird. And I think he's listed at like 240. But he doesn't look 240, but obviously that's just because he's so tall. He's not. I mean, he's bulk, but he's not like P. Ryan bulk or something like that. He's probably about like Fournette's build, but he's kind of fast. But like he's that cut runner. Like when he plants hard and he goes. Like his footwork, just everything from his lower body is just amazing. Like he cuts on a dime and he runs really well. But it's weird because he does the things as a running back you almost don't expect that kind of running back to do. So Hurd's probably going to be the most interesting running back evaluation probably this whole year because one, he's 6'4", two, is he going to weigh in at 240 or is he going to try and shed at 220? But then you have a 6'4", 220 running back. And I'm not sure exactly how much value that has if you have a guy who's that skinny, who's lost that much muscle mass for his speed. And then you see a lot of things on film that he does well, but it's not the things that 6'4" running backs probably should be doing well, and you wonder if it translates. But, man, he makes a lot of guys miss, and he's just so interesting. Just his whole just hips and ankle and footwork is just really, really precise.
Yeah, he's a guy I'm rooting for precisely because he is so unique, but it's also something I worry about, obviously, is a physique that far from the mean. it
Yeah.
might even be viable in the NFL.
And
But
I think he's going to be. I think he might test poorly, and
Yeah.
I think that could really. I think that could shoot him down to like mid to late day 3 if he tests really bad and if his film kind of stays the same. Just because there's so many. It's such a tough projection with a player like that, where if he does everything that he's supposed to do right, he's a day 2 player. But if it's a weird projection and teams don't know what to do and don't know what to expect, he could drop down to day 3.
Yeah, people were asking these questions about Derrick Henry, who's not even quite as tall as Hurd is, but Henry, had a very strong combine. He's an excellent athlete, especially in straight line explosiveness. And people are still asking these questions. He's still going to have to deal with problems. Himself being too long, it's easier for defenders to trip him up to get a hand on him. So Hurd's going to have to deal with all of that with probably lesser explosiveness. So it's interesting to see if he's going to be viable in spite of that.
Yeah,
and in college, he's very fun. He's very fun to watch.
I love watching him.
All right. So that's it for my list.
I've got a few guys.
I've also got a few guys.
Good.
Yeah, let's go, Alex.
Any of them, James Conner. John Connor. Terminator.
James Conner.
The Connor from Pitt. No? Okay.
I haven't watched him. Just kind of rooting for him to not have cancer.
He doesn't have cancer. That's be interesting.
Well, that's what I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for
that to continue.
He's similar to these guys. He's a power back. He has done some absolutely amazing games at Pittsburgh. I'm a little skeptical of him in the NFL, but again, he's probably the upper day 3 guy at this point, assuming he can come back to both full football strength, like we were talking about before, if he's in football shape, which is certainly hard to do after you have cancer.
Right. Garrett, who do you got?
I've got just a quick list of guys. I don't need to list them all. I know if you have other names, Alex. I'll just start with Matt Breida. He's from, I didn't write down where he's from. I don't even remember where he's from, but he's good. A lot of people have been talking about Elijah Hood from North Carolina, and Elijah Hood's good. I just think that Breida is better and fewer people are talking about him, which is exciting from a draft perspective. He's very explosive. He's faster than Hood, I think. He's got a good feet. He's flexible lower body and pretty good pass catcher as well. He doesn't really look like a big player, but when he gets out of the open field, he's got this stride that almost seems more than you would expect for his height. And that's kind of a good thing when you're talking about skill position players. I see that with Deshaun Jackson as well. Kind of his legs are almost disproportional to his body. Matt Breida is a guy to watch this season. Alex, do you have another guy?
Yeah, in Big Ten, people last year at this time were all ready for Melvin Gordon's successor, Corey Clement, to the next big thing. He wasn't, mainly due to injury, but he wasn't that great when he's back in. I think this year he could be what people thought he could be last year, because I really liked what I saw from him pre-2015, and he's an athletic guy who can move. He's got I like his lateral movement a lot, and he can pack some punch, so I think he can be another day 3 guy that will pay off for somebody.
Yeah, these are all probably likely day 3 guys that we're talking about right now.
Yeah. That was the guy I was going to say is Corey Clement, just because I knew the hype and hopes of him were very high last year. I think, isn't he mainly a one-cut runner? Isn't that kind of with Wisconsin? Obviously, Wisconsin always has great offensive lines. The state of their line this year, I don't know. I don't know anything about Wisconsin offensive line this year.
You don't have to know anything about it. You can just assume it's going to be good.
Yeah, and so I mean that'll be a tricky point in terms of evaluation, but a lot of that should still just be able to translate to the NFL level. But yeah, he's another guy from a big running back school recently. You talk about Georgia having the best recruiting. Wisconsin still has pumped out a crap ton of running backs into the NFL. So him as a senior is going to be interesting.
All right, next guy I have is Elijah McGuire from, I believe, Louisiana Lafayette. And I think some people have said, and I agree, he might be the best receiving back in this class. He's got the speed to do the job, and certainly the hands and body control. But also he's tough enough, and he's got the cutting ability to be viable in the run game as well. The only question I really have with him is weight. If he could put on another 5 or 10 pounds, that would be tremendously helpful to him. But he's exciting, and not a lot of people are talking about him. Alex, do you agree?
Yeah, I like him a lot. I got to see him live in one game. I don't know how. It was a weird story, but I just ended up on one of his games, and he blew me away as an NFL guy in a game where there were not a lot of NFL talent. So, yeah, he's another one of my guys. And last guy on my list is an Ohio guy, Kareem Hunt, who's been a name that's been around for a little bit. He's a Toledo running back. He's smaller, and he's not going to run very. Well, actually, he's decently heavy, but he's shorter. He's not going to run very fast, and probably like 4'6" guy. But he is an excellent college player, and I think he is, again, it's the same things we're talking about, the ability to move laterally, and he's a good receiver as well. I think he can be he's probably going to go later on day 3, but I'm all in on him too.
If anybody is going to jump out at us this year and surprise us in terms of running back prospects, it's going to be whoever Ohio State starts, and it's going to be probably Bo Scarborough from Alabama, because I believe he is eligible this year, although it'll be his first year of real playing time.
Yeah, but Ohio State's guy this year is Mike Weber. He's not a prospect for this year. He's a redshirt freshman. But next year he's going to be a guy. He's really good.
People are excited about him, yeah. So I was just going to say, people are excited about Bo Scarborough too. He's just this giant ball. He looks like a Batman villain, like Bane or something. But yeah, so he's going to be fun to watch, and he is eligible. And injuries have been a problem for him for like really the last 4 years or so. But this could be his time to shine. So that'll be interesting. Other guy I've got on my list, Marlon Mack from South Florida. He's very tough, and he's very elusive, which is very fun to watch. He can be a little bit hesitant sometimes, which is something I hate to see in running backs. I see this occasionally in Royce Freeman too, although I think that's kind of a product of him being in space a lot and just sometimes trying to make something out of what should be just easy yardage. Mack is interesting because he often has games like USF. They're not a big powerhouse program, but they are in Florida, so they do have these really kind of weird, randomly freaky guys, and they do play against a lot of good competition. So he'll probably be on your TV at some point this year. So when you see a USF game, try and watch Marlon Mack because he's definitely worth it.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for listening to the Draft Indy podcast. We will be back next week talking about the Bills game, maybe working on getting some sort of guest in here. And I'm trying to think of what else we'll be talking about next week. Oh, yeah, we're also going to continue our little watch list period here as we continue on in the preseason, since there's not really too much to talk about unless there's major injury or someone has a killer game in the preseason, et cetera, et cetera. So pay attention to that, and we will be back next week, and thank you for listening. We'll see y'all next week. That was awkward.